Cinematic dusk settled over the Wild West town, that fragile hour when daylight thins and shadows choose new shapes. Wind wandered through the empty street, lifting dust like quiet memories rising from old earth. Inside the saloon, lanterns burned low, flickering in weary hues, casting their glow against wooden walls that had seen too much sorrow. Elsie pressed herself deeper into the farthest corner, her breath uneven, her heartbeat loud enough she feared it might summon trouble on its own. She had come here trembling, leaning into the dark the way a hunted creature leans into brush. She kept her head low, fingers tight around the strap of her small satchel, trying to make her shape smaller, quieter, less noticeable. She had run from a settlement that demanded things from her she never agreed to give. Weeks of whispers, of men laying claim to her life, as though she were land to be fenced and branded, had pushed her to desperation. She wasn't weak. Anyone looking closely would see the stubborn fire behind her eyes. But tonight, even fire needed a place to hide. Dust clung to her dress, to her trembling fingers, to the fading braid over her shoulder. She folded in on herself, silently praying no one would recognize her silhouette, praying the night would drape itself over her like a shield. The door creaked. New boots crossed the threshold with a rhythm too steady to belong to a drunk or a fool. Edgar stepped in like a storm entering a still room. At 34, he carried the kind of presence that silenced rowdy men without a word. Broad-shouldered, steady-eyed, a man carved from long seasons of ranch work and longer seasons of loneliness. Rumor painted him as heartless, a rancher who preferred the company of silence to people. But tonight, something in him shifted the moment he saw the faint outline of a girl pressed against the far wall. He didn't approach her, not at first. Edgar simply stood there, scanning the room, sensing danger like a ranch dog catching a scent in the wind. Old Sam, the bartender with a gray beard like smoke, raised an eyebrow at him. Sam had been guarding Elsie, not with fists, but with the quiet loyalty of someone who'd seen too many lost souls find their last hope in this dim-lit place. He gave Edgar a look, half warning, half plea, as if to say, tread soft. Edgar did. His boots slowed, each step careful, as though he didn't want to startle the ghost-like girl in the shadows. Elsie looked up, her eyes widening, expecting the worst. Men had always approached her with hunger or anger, sometimes both. Edgar approached like someone trying to understand which wound hurt most. The saloon air thickened. Outside, the sky darkened to a deep bruised purple. A horse neighed somewhere in the distance. Elsie clutched her satchel closer, as though it contained the last of her safety. She wanted to vanish into the walls, but Edgar's gaze, steady, unreadable, anchored her. Sam leaned toward Edgar. Quiet voice. Trouble sniffing around for her. Best not make it worse. Edgar didn't answer. His jaw set in that familiar iron way of his, but the hardness wasn't anger. It was decision forming, slow and heavy, like thunder preparing its strike. Footsteps approached outside the saloon. More than one pair. Heavy, impatient. A man called out, voice rough. Anyone seen a young settler girl pass through? We got business with her. Elsie froze. Her fingers dug into the wood beneath her. The walls felt too thin. Her breath trembled. Edgar turned slightly, placing himself directly between her and the door. He didn't look back at her. He didn't need to. He could feel the fear radiating from her like heat from a wildfire. Sam's face tightened. The whole saloon held its breath, waiting for Edgar to either walk away or make things worse. He chose neither. He chose something else entirely. When the door opened again and two men stepped in, Edgar straightened to his full height. His shadow stretched long across the floorboards. He didn't draw a gun, didn't spit threats. He simply stared, cold as desert night, unmovable as canyon stone. We're looking for a runaway girl, one of the men said. Small thing. Brown hair. Settler dress. You seen her? Edgar's silence was so deep it felt like the building itself leaned in to listen. The men shifted, uneasy. Everyone knew Edgar rarely wasted breath, but tonight his silence held the weight of a warning. A long pause. Then, with deliberate calm, he shook his head once. Haven't seen anyone worth looking for. The lie sat heavy in the room, but it was a shield, and it fit perfectly around Elsie. The men narrowed their eyes, but even they knew trouble wasn't worth poking tonight. They muttered curses and stepped back out into the deepening dark. Only when their footsteps faded did the saloon exhale again. Elsie's knees nearly gave out. Sam steadied her with a gentle hand. Edgar took one step closer, the lantern light catching the faint lines of fatigue etched into his face. Elsie whispered, why would you help me?" Her voice shook like a loose shutter in a storm. Edgar looked at her, really looked, and something fragile stirred behind his stern exterior. He reached for his hat brim, adjusting it as if searching for the right shape of a response. "Not help in you. Help in a situation that didn't sit right with me." The lie of modesty was thin, but it was his way. He didn't know how to speak kindness without disguising it. Elsie blinked away, a tear she refused to shed. She had been hunted, judged, cornered, but no one, not a single soul, had stood between her and danger without trying to own her afterward. Until him. Outside, the wind picked up again. Glass rattled. Somewhere in the street, a stray dog barked. The world felt frayed, ready to snap. Edgar sensed it too. He turned toward the door, then toward Elsie, weighing choices he wasn't used to making. His voice was low, gravel-soft. "Lady, gather your stuff, you're coming with me." The words struck the room like the crack of a whip, but there was no threat in them, no command dripping with ownership, only a promise, a lifeline thrown across a chasm. Elsie's heart slammed against her ribs. She stared at him, unsure whether to trust the man with the storm eyes or run until her lungs failed. Sam's hand tightened on her shoulder, a silent vote of confidence. Edgar held her gaze, steady as sunrise. "Not dragging you. Not claiming you. Just not letting wolves get to you tonight." Something inside her, something bruised and guarded, softened. Slowly, she picked up her small satchel. Her steps were hesitant, each one a negotiation between fear and hope. Edgar opened the saloon door. Cool night air swept in, smelling of dust, distant rain, and fragile beginnings. When Elsie stepped outside, Edgar positioned himself at her side, not leading, not hurting, simply matching her pace. Behind them, Sam whispered a prayer. Ahead of them, destiny waited, silent and patient as the long western night. As they walked, lantern lights swayed in the wind, throwing restless shadows. Elsie kept her eyes low, afraid the night might expose her trembling. Edgar noticed and angled himself to shield her from the glances of passing drifters. His movements were quiet, protective, the kind that expected no gratitude. Thunder rumbled far off, echoing the storm gathering inside Edgar. He wasn't used to caring. Caring had cost him too much in the past. Yet something in Elsie's steady endurance pulled at him, loosening the armor around his spirit. Near the water trough, a figure stepped out. One of the men from earlier, broad, angry, searching. His gaze locked onto Elsie, then Edgar. "Thought you could hide her, rancher?" Edgar stepped forward, stance firm. Elsie's breath caught, but she didn't retreat. The man reached for a rope at his belt, a symbol she knew too well. Edgar's eyes darkened. "Not tonight." His voice cut through the street. "Turn around. Now." The threat in it was quiet but unshakable. The man weighed his chances, spat in the dirt, and slipped back into the darkness. Elsie exhaled shakily. Edgar looked at her with an expression gentler than she expected. "You don't have to fear them. Not while I'm here." For a moment, the world stood still. She met his gaze, seeing not a cold rancher, but a man choosing to stand between her and every danger. Something warm flickered inside her, trust beginning to bloom. Thunder cracked overhead. Edgar gestured down the road. "Let's get you somewhere safe. Tonight isn't meant to break you." She hesitated, the weight of her past still clinging to her like dust on her dress, yet the promise in his voice steadied her trembling. Each step she took beside him felt like stepping out of an old nightmare and into a future she had never imagined she could claim. The wind softened, carrying the scent of coming rain and possibility. And for the first time in many lonely miles, Elsie allowed herself to believe she might finally be safe, maybe even cared for.